Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Welcome to Lyme Time, everyone. Today I have a very, very extra special guest. Her name is Dr. Cathleen King, DPT. I call her Dr. Cat, and she is a physical therapist, neuroscience educator, and coach specializing in chronic illness and trauma patterns. She weaves together brain retraining, nervous system regulation, polyvagal theory. Oh, that's a tongue twister. I'll have her go into that a little bit later. Somatics and trauma-informed attachment repair techniques. All of that is grouped together in her programs, and she just really knows her stuff so well. She's the founder of the Primal Trust Community, which is an online academy and mentoring program for those on the transformational healing journey, which is, of course, all of us. She personally found freedom from over a decade of debilitating chronic Lyme disease, CFS, mold toxicity, dysautonomia, POTS, parasite infections, PTSD, and more, which is incredible. I'm so happy to welcome you, Dr. Cathleen.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I've been looking forward to this for a very, very long time. I know that you and I have been speaking for literally a few months, trying to get our schedules together. And, I think that brain rewiring is not only a very hot topic right now, but it is especially amongst our community, which is, everybody in a chronic condition at this point in their lives. Can you tell our listeners the basics of what we mean by brain rewiring?
Yeah. Brain retraining is basically, or brain rewiring, both terms are used interchangeably. It's using the science of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity meaning the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural networks. And this happens throughout our life. What it means is that everything that's been learned in our brain can actually be unlearned and rewired. And so brain retraining is retraining the brain to perceive your internal body differently and to perceive your external world differently. Primarily, we use it to calm down that internal threat response that's causing our body to go into dysregulation. And so it's especially helpful if you've got a chronic illness or a chronic stress response. Brain retraining or brain rewiring should be in everybody's toolkit. And it's part of my mission to make sure that everybody has that tool if they're on the healing journey.
Great. And does it involve the vagus nerve? Let's talk about the vagus right now.
So brain retraining, typically people call that a top-down approach, meaning you're triggering the brain, specifically the limbic system, and even more specifically, a structure called your amygdala, which is your fear center, to calm down and to send messages of safety into the body. Whereas vagus nerve retraining is often targeted from a bottom-up approach or body-to-brain signaling, and the vagus nerve is relaying messages back to the amygdala that everything's fine or not fine. And so they actually work together. And so I actually like to, when I say brain retraining in my work, I actually often include vagus nerve retraining or vagal toning exercises, along with helping the amygdala learn to calm down, because, why just, when you can kill two birds with one stone, why don't you work on both? So.
Oh, that's great. I never really knew the difference between those two. And let's just talk a little bit about the brain to the body, the brain to body, which is what your specialty is really primarily, and the brain to body. So for those of us that are brand new to this, brain to body, let's just break it down even further. We are currently in a chronic condition that we find ourselves in. It probably was triggered by something out of the blue, and we're sitting here and we're in an acute state right now. So what is it exactly that we can do, I guess, to unlock that a little bit better? Help us understand the connection between, okay, I'm sitting here in a lot of pain and discomfort, brain fog, neurological symptoms, the list goes on. And how would brain retraining actually unlock the healing component that's just not firing off for us right now?
So when you're in that state of chronic pain, brain fog symptoms, generally you're probably feeling stressed, scared, or what I would say as you're not feeling okay. And when we don't feel okay, our autonomic nervous system gets put into a sympathetic overdrive, which means you're going to have stress hormones running all through your body: cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. And stress hormones continue to keep all of our body systems dysregulated. Our immune system, it goes into a dysfunction where it's harder to fight infections. Our digestive system, we develop allergies and sensitivities. Our hormones get off. We stop sleeping. Our pain receptors get heightened. We go into pain very easily. And so what you're describing is, okay, I'm not feeling okay, and my body or my autonomic nervous system is going haywire, right? So what does brain retraining do? Brain retraining specifically targets the limbic system, which is your sense of threat or safety. And it's trying to get the limbic system to say, hey, we're actually okay. And this is really counterintuitive because you're like, wait a minute, I'm not okay. I've got all this going on. But if you're wanting to get your body to go into a healing state, you're going to have to get your brain, your amygdala, to say, we're okay. We can go into rest repair, even though we might have this infection going on, even though there might be some toxicity, that overall we're okay and we can handle it, so that your autonomic nervous system will kick up its parasympathetic response. And that's going to be the rest and repair, getting the immune system back online, detoxification system back online. And this is the trick. It's hard to do that when you have infections and toxins. And so brain retraining is a way of overriding the fact that your body is sick and full of toxins. You're at will getting your amygdala to have a perception of safety so that the internal system can come back online and do what it's meant to do, which is to fight those infections and to detoxify. And our body has that ability, no matter what's going on with you. I had every diagnosis. I could battle anyone in this community. And I taught my brain and my body that it could handle it. And sure enough, over time, it could. It also makes it it makes it easier to handle your treatments as well. So when your nervous system is relaxed, you're going to handle the supplements they're giving you, the detoxification agents they're giving you. And so it's not about, getting so strong that you make your body just heal itself. Well, it can do that, but you can also have a better and easier path with the treatments that you are getting to support your healing journey.
So, and I'm again going to take a guess here and say that some people are able to do this in a relatively short period of time, and then others may take a while. So obviously, we're not going to say that anybody's bringing on their own health ailments or anything like that. But I'm just curious to know, what, in your opinion, are some of the key traits of somebody that heals a little bit faster, possibly, than somebody else?
This is such an important question. And this is something I wish I could talk about more with more groups. So there's a few things that I see. In order to turn on your self-healing mechanisms or your parasympathetic nervous system, a few things need to be in place. There needs to be a sense of environmental safety, which means relationships that are supportive, an environment that feels healthy and supportive. So a sense of environmental safety outside, that's one step. There needs to be a sense of capacity inside to handle the bumps, a sense of like, I've got this, I'm resilient, versus like, oh my gosh, I can't handle anything. So there's kind of a personality trait that needs to be developed. And then there's something that I call the adult main personality. And a lot of attachment theory people will talk about a main personality or a healthy inner adult concept that I think is vital. And when people end up coming to me that have been doing brain retraining or other programs for years, and it's not worked, I almost always see an underdeveloped adult main personality, which is the part of you where your prefrontal cortex has a sense of a healthy ego development. And I see that people who don't have that healthy adult main personality often have some type of trauma background or codependency background where they never developed a strong sense of self. Because ultimately, who's telling the brain to calm down? It's this strong sense of self. And the amygdala is kind of like, are we okay? Are we not okay? And without a strong sense of self, you're like, I don't know, am I okay or am I not okay? You have to develop this, I'm okay, I can handle it. And so for me personally, I had to go on the journey of developing what I call a healthy adult main personality. And that's really what I teach in my Primal Trust mentorship, which is kind of the second stage of brain retraining.
Oh, it's fascinating, truly. I mean, there's a lot to be said about mind over matter and just how you just, sometimes I even tell my kids, just fake it till you make it. Just believe it, visualize it, just say it's true, just keep on going on, and moving one foot in front of the other. And I know it doesn't boil down to only that, but it's really actually helped me so much with my own journey, was that I was so adamantly against this thing, Lyme disease, infiltrating the rest of my life. I really refused that. And to a certain extent, the people, and I'll just go into this briefly, but, instead of, I do think that there's a certain amount of okayness with being not in denial. I won't take it that far, but in saying, this isn't actually real. This is not actually really happening. This might be happening for a moment, but it will not take over the rest of my life. And completely denying its existence. I don't know if that's the same as what you're saying, but I have found that has helped me in my own just practice. And I, of course, I have done emotional releasing and all of that before I got to this point, but it was really just sort of like, no, it's not happening.
I love that. And what I think you're saying, and this is what I had to do, is it doesn't mean what you think it has to mean. In other words, chronic Lyme disease, chronic illnesses that are supposedly incurable and untreatable, it has a particular meaning that we could take on of, I'm going to be a victim to this my whole life. My life is over. And at first I kind of went down that path. And eventually I had to decide what it means to have a Lyme disease diagnosis. And if you heard any of my other interviews, I actually end up saying, I think my only infection is fear. And I do happen to have this excessive microbe level in my body, but I think it's a representation to the fear level in my body, and that my own body can adjust my microbiome to my overall sense of being. And so I changed my definition of Lyme disease to just meaning a particular excess point of pathogens had, our bodies are always having pathogens come and flow and ebb and flow, and, we're one big group of bugs. And so trying to kill every bad guy is an absolute impossible task. And it is possible to live with Lyme disease and be symptom-free. And we know that there have been many studies showing people they have a diagnosis, they have it in there, and they don't have symptoms and they're healthy and vital. Why? Because their microbiome has adjusted to it, has learned how to be resourceful around it. And I realized that's the path I'm going to go on, because if I keep trying to kill this thing, it's making me sicker. I'm scared all the time. And I felt like I was being attacked by monsters inside of me. And I knew that wasn't supporting me. So it's not about denying like, oh no, there's nothing there, but it's about, what does it mean? Maybe the meaning needs to shift a little bit so that I can believe that somehow I can have a healthy, vital life and maybe have some microbes in my body that others would say shouldn't be there. Maybe it's okay. And maybe that in small levels, they can be there and my body can figure it out. And that's exactly what happened.
I love that. It's so well put by you. Thank you, Dr. Kat. Yeah, in my discussions with Dr. Bill Rawls, who's an herbalist, but he's also a medical doctor, and once he got Lyme disease, he kind of just views it as more of a blanket term, not necessarily the disease that's going to take me down. It's just sort of like a blanket term of like your system having some issues right now, and he sort of like simplifies it in such a way that it's actually you can see that, yes, I can attain health through all of this. Okay. So when you talk about brain trauma and traumatic experiences, so I know that a lot of listeners are going to be still wanting to have this be body sort of like, oh, I didn't have brain trauma as a child. I don't remember hitting my head. I don't remember anything like that. But we're not necessarily talking about physical brain trauma. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean when you say brain trauma?
Yeah. There are different types of trauma. All right. Trauma could be a physical injury. It could be a hit my head. It could be a chemical toxicity, being in a home with mold or other chemicals. But trauma could also be growing up in an environment where there were adults that were always dysregulated, and that nervous system, as it grew up, didn't ever get a sense of what regulation felt like. So they were always kind of on edge. And that actually creates a low level chronic trauma in the body. And then there are obviously the big T traumas, which is, things we don't want to think about, but that do happen. And then people would say little T traumas, which is being maybe slightly bullied or ignored or outcast or whatever growing up, that ends up developing a type of hypervigilant nervous system. So, if you're somebody who has hypervigilance and it's been going on for a long time, you probably have some trauma patterns that might not be as obvious because you don't have an injury or some big awful thing that happened in your family, but was enough for you to develop that vigilance. And really, one of the definitions of trauma that I love by Gabor Mate, who's one of my favorite people if you have trauma history, he says, trauma is not what happens to us. It happens as a reason. It's how I'm going to mess up the quote, but it's basically how our nervous system responds because of what happened to us. And how we respond is going to be different from person to person. Two people could be in an accident. One person's nervous system could respond just fine. Another person could respond in a state of vigilance and trauma. So it's not about what happens. It's just about how your nervous system happened to respond.
Right. Very, very good to note about that. Do you feel that brain retraining, rewiring can permanently heal PTSD? And I assume we're talking about PTSD in small ways and big ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it absolutely has that potential. But I actually would say with PTSD, I find it even more helpful to mix somatic healing or vagal nerve retraining with brain retraining, so that you're getting the body up healing and the top down, brain down healing. In my particular brain retraining program, I combine both, and there are ways of combining both to do that. But absolutely, because it's really just teaching the nervous system that the threat has passed. And with trauma, what happens is these memory structures get activated that don't fully resolve the sense of threat, and they just keep operating in the background. And so we need that memory structure to recognize that in this current reality, that threat has passed, and that recognition has to happen both in the brain, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and in the body, the nervous system set point.
Right. I'm assuming that first of all, I want to ask you, do you think that somebody could be born into this lifetime already carrying that fight or flight, and maybe something didn't happen to them, but maybe just genetically, it's just the way they came out?
Yeah, absolutely. And this can get into a little bit of quantum stuff, but just on a physical level, if the mother was in a state of nervous system stress while carrying that baby in the womb, that's what you marinated in. Your nervous system learns that state of set point, which is stress. And then even in our genetic coding ancestrally, there's A lot of people would say, 7 generations, your DNA has a particular memory structure as well. And so I know for me, I had a lot of memories of war and all sorts of things. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And I didn't actually know my dad. And I found out a few years ago that my dad was from Poland and was in a lot of wars. And I'm like, I'm half Polish. And so it was all in me. I'm like, why do I always have this feeling of war? And so I'm a big believer of generational trauma, getting stuck in the DNA and the imprinting and the memory structures. Just like when someone gets a heart transplant, right? They get somebody else's heart and all of a sudden they start having memories of that person's life. Memories are in our cells and in our DNA. So absolutely, it's going to carry down. And we develop our nervous system by our early environment. So being in the womb or early on around a lot of people that are dysregulated, that's going to result in a nervous system that has a set point more towards the trauma behavior side of things.
Wow, it's incredible. There's so much I think that we just don't know about all of this. And I think COVID has really shifted a consciousness. And I feel as though people are more apt to be open-minded toward all of everything that you're talking about, because, just seeing big pharma and the medical community and how invested they are in our sickness and all of that, it's at least brought it to light for me that we can it is possible to heal ourselves.
Yeah.
It's completely possible. You're probably better off, and you could do it a lot faster than running around. And I'm not trying to simplify anything for anyone. I'm just saying, to try, if you can, to just open your mind to those possibilities. What, in your opinion, is the best fuel for the brain? And I'm talking about food-wise. Would you say healthy fats or carbs, or, when we're talking about just pure fuel for the day?
Mm-hmm. So this is such an interesting question and controversial question. So our brain runs off glucose, right? So when we are low on glucose, we are not going to feel good. So I think the first thing is to just make sure that you are getting adequate nutrition and nutrition that your body can actually use. And I think there's two camps here. There is the healthy fats, the fish oils, the DHEA, as fuel for the brain. I totally get that. And then there's the other camp, which is like fruits and vegetables and healthy glucose amounts. So I'm not going to say which one I prefer, but I will say that at different points in my journey, I needed one and then I switched to another. And for me, when I was really ill, it was more paleo. And as I started to heal, it became more vegan. And so that was really interesting for me, how my brain fuel changed. But either way, the healthy fat route, the high fruits and vegetables, just making sure to know that your brain needs nutrition and it needs healthy nutrition. So that's my answer. I didn't give you a direct one, but there you go.
I know it's complicated, and especially with people with a very, very that are in the acute stages of traumatic, healing. You're right. I think it's it's a roller coaster, and what you try one month, it may not work for you the next month. And it's sort of like trial and error. I was the same as you. I did a lot of what I found to not be triggering in the beginning was meat protein. It's the only thing I could eat that wasn't setting my body into a major flare. Mm-hmm. So there I was, and that's what I ate. And, reduced carbs, of course, and dairy and all of that. But I had to eat something. So a lot of times it would just be a piece of, sliced turkey or something like that with nothing else. Even foods like pepper in the beginning, I couldn't even top my foods with pepper. It would just start a whole thing in my throat. So I would say to everybody out there, just take it slowly, and your body will actually tell you.
Yes.
I could look at a glass of wine and I could say, no way am I getting near that. And then, 4 or 5 months later, I wouldn't even, I'd just have a glass of wine. So it's super interesting what your body, if you're just in tune with your body, it will tell you. Okay, another hot topic that we're hearing a lot about is cannabis. And I would just want to know basically, is it good or bad for stress and focus for your brain, for the actual brain itself and the organ? I know that what are your opinions about that?
Yeah, this is another really hot topic. So there was a stage where I used a lot of CBD oil when I was in massive insomnia, brain fog, etc. And it was really helpful, and it allowed me to be able to show up a little bit for my kids. This was at my like worst of worst. And then for a while I was like, oh, maybe I'll try the indica route to help with sleep. And it did help with sleep, but I felt like it actually slowed some other pieces down for me. And as I started to study it, I learned that when you are using cannabis, it can affect the way that you are processing your emotions and your memory structures. And ultimately, to get our autonomic nervous system back online, we want our memory structures to catch up to the current reality, like I said, and we want to process emotions. And so if something is going to be limiting you from that, you might want to look at it. Now, if it's a bridge and you are really like, I can't even do that because I'm in hell, then maybe that particular tool is a tool for a time. But like I say to everybody, whatever tool you're using, don't necessarily assume it's your life tool. It may just be something to get you through that step until you get more capacity to graduate into something else. So that's what I would say about cannabis. I don't use any of that anymore. Because I think that now my brain processing is much better. But I do think that it can affect some processing. I think there are some other medicinal tools. I'm really interested in microdosing, psilocybin, and things like that for helping with trauma processing. There's a lot of really promising research happening there that I think will be coming out. And, so I think there's stuff around the corner to be helping people with those next pieces. So just see it as
that's mushrooms for those of you who don't know what it is.
Oh yeah, mushrooms. Psilocybin is mushrooms. Microdosing is what I'm talking about.
Microdosing. Yeah. So, in your experience, is that something, microdosing, and I've always been curious about this, something somebody could do during the day, or would it be more for rest and relaxation at bedtime or something?
I'm not a microdosing expert, but I do have several, I know about it. And it is something that people do daily, almost as a supplement instead of, an SSRI or other things. So, just helping to deal with trauma. And then some people will do actual sessions with therapists with certain types of plant medicine like that, and other entheogens, which is other chemical compounds to help with repatterning the brain, repatterning the nervous system, repatterning the memory structure. So I always recommend that if you're going to go down that route, it's not self-prescribed in any way. You're working with an expert who knows exactly what they're doing, and it's possible to have that be a tool to help you along. And I will say, I didn't use any of those tools. I used brain retraining and nervous system regulation alone, and I'm here today doing what I'm doing. So that's also possible.
Thank goodness you did, because we can all use a session or two with you. Yeah. You touched on polyvagal theory. Can you just tell us one, little parting word about that?
Yeah, polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory is going to be something that I highly recommend people learn about. I'd say a great place to start are the books by Deb Dana. Deb Dana is a therapist. She writes different books and has different practices. But the polyvagal theory was described by Stephen Porges, who's the polyvagal founder, as the theory of how our nervous system state of safety or threat shapes our perception of the world. Meaning our perception of our reality is based on the state of our autonomic nervous system. And he describes 3 different states of our autonomic nervous system. You're either in safety and connection, which is the state of ventral vagal safety, or you're in the state of fight, flight, fawn, fine. Those are a few terms that are the second state, which is sympathetic nervous system overreactivity. Or there is freeze or shutdown, which is called the dorsal vagal state. So 3 different states of our autonomic nervous system, and depending where you're at is how you perceive the world. So if you are in sympathetic fight flight, you're going to think the world has some threat. If you are in dorsal vagal shutdown, you're going to feel like no one loves you, no one's there for you, it's all hopeless. If you're in ventral vagal safety, which is actually a mixture of parasympathetic and sympathetic, and in a very perfect balance, you're going to feel like it's safe to come in the world. I can relax, or I can feel like getting up and doing something. And so with my work, I really encourage people to become aware of where they're at in the polyvagal map, because where you're at is going to depend, it's going to help you know what tool to use. It's going to help you give information to your family of, right now I'm in this state and this is what I need. So it's about developing awareness of the nervous system. So I highly recommend anyone get into polyvagal mapping and understanding. And there's some great, even like biotech apps to help you with your with your vagus nerve, with your autonomic states. Yeah. There is one particular program that I recommend to almost all my clients called the Safe and Sound Protocol. And I can put in the notes a couple practitioners. It's an auditory protocol that was developed originally for autism, but it's great for trauma, illness, PTSD, and it kind of teaches your nervous system how to move in and out of each of these three states. So Polyvagal theory describes that you would want to get your nervous system able to move in and out of all of those states. So instead of getting stuck in sympathetic fight, flight, insomnia, you'd be able to get aroused or frightened and then come back down to calm and go to sleep that night. And so it's about learning how to move in and out of states of threat, rather than like, no, I need to be calm all the time. No, that's not the goal. It's about getting scared and coming back to calm, getting mad and coming back to calm, feeling a little sad and shut down one day. And the next day, you know what, I'm okay. So nervous system flexibility is the goal here with that.
I can tell that is going to resonate with so many of our listeners right there. It's something that most people don't even question about themselves. They'll just label themselves. Oh, I'm this way. I have this type of personality, or I have that type of personality. And, oh, I've just always been nervous, or I've never been able to sleep, or whatever it is. And being able to weave in and out of that and incorporate this actual safety stage is just, I have a feeling it's going to unlock a lot for a lot of people. It's very interesting. Okay, well, I hate to wrap this up. I hope you'll come back and speak to us a little bit more. I wanted to ask you what you have, in the works personally or professionally.
Yeah. Well, I've got something super exciting. So in the past, I had courses. I had a basic nervous system regulation course, relearn brain retraining, polyvagal. And then I had something called the Primal Trust Mentorship as the next phase. And that's several months long. It's been super popular, super successful. And then I have this like ongoing community. Well, I've decided to put it all in one big community that I'm just calling the Primal Trust Community. And that is going to be launching here this winter. And what that means is that all of my courses, the whole mentorship, all of my group question, answer, everything, all in one low monthly membership. So people can come in and they can start getting these tools. They can take the Primal Trust Mentorship, which was a really high ticket product. It's been so successful that I'm like, I need to get this to everybody in a way that they can afford, in a way that works for me. So I've got, the whole map. You'll learn brain retraining, polyvagal theory, somatics, vagus nerve toning, even a little energy medicine, and then the Primal Trust Mentorship, which is a journey and a roadmap to reclaiming your health, integrating all these pieces, including inner attachment repair, developing that adult male personality we talked about. And it's really exciting. It's really the culmination of the last 3 years of all of my coaching, all of my research, and putting it all together. And my ultimate mission was that every person on this planet deserves these tools. I mean, whether you're sick or ill, what's happening right now globally is people's nervous systems are breaking. They are breaking. Limbic disorder, brain issues, nervous system dysregulation affecting us. And when we can't think for ourselves, we can't decide for ourselves, and our immune system gets dysregulated. So my mission is that everybody can get these tools and learn how to use them, whether they're sick or whether they're just stressed out at their job or a stressed out parent. So that's what's coming.
So happy that you're offering this to, packaging it up in one place. I have personally had sessions with Dr. Kat, and I'm just so happy to bring her to everyone's attention. I can't wait to see what you have in the future. Obviously, you have your YouTube channel. I know you also are, everything can be found at CathleenKing.com, which is spelled with a CATHLEENKING.com. And also on Instagram, you're at Dr. Cathleen King, Dr. Cathleen King. So thank you. I can't wait to welcome you back in the future and see what fun stuff we can do together. And I just really, really appreciate it. Do you have any parting words for some of our listeners?
Sure. I just want you all to know that you have this innate healing capacity within you. There is no illness or pathogen load that is too big for your own immune system. I've seen too many people turn around from what would seem like they're on death's door and unlock that vitality by just getting their brain and nervous system back online. There is always hope. Not that you won't need some help along the way, but truly anything is possible, and nothing's too big for your own beautiful body that has all the innate intelligence you could ever imagine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.